Hey, college sports fans, does cold water wash away rat poison? We'll find out. We're going to talk about some of the things at Clemson, who's really been almost a preseason darling of the national football media coming up on the 2025 season. It's a little unusual to you and I paying a lot of attention to Clemson, so we're going to try to balance it. You know what? Even in the preseason series, like I've been kind of high on Clemson and really talking up position by position and group by group. So I'm going to admit to some things that I think might derail, as you put, Clemson season in 2025, unless they work on them. And they should be things that can be worked on and get fixed. So anyway, I'm Bill Zimmerman. This is the Reign Supreme Always podcast, season 4.
I'm Daniel Shirley. You talk about cold waters. You've talked about Florida State's tears. I mean, you just water references left and right from you. I think I've been overly optimistic about this team, about this season. If you know me or if you've received a text from me during a game, you know what I'm talking about there. But Bill, it's been a couple of years, right? When's the last time Clemson was a preseason top 10? They weren't
Right.
preseason top 10 last year, and the coaches poll just came out. Clemson was sixth. I've got a little bit of a friendly wager with somebody who said Clemson was going to be number one in the AP poll.
Wow.
So I don't think it's that. It could end up being that, but I don't think it's that. But I do think there's a lot of positives about this team. We've talked a lot about that in our series, and we'll continue to talk a lot about that in our series, the position by position series. But there's always things, as me as a sports fan, who I go, okay, yeah, that's all sounds good, but right. I mean, that's just who I am as a sports fan. So we'll get into some of that today.
Yeah, and I think we can both agree the running game on both sides of the ball had a lot of problems last year. Needs to
Yep.
be fixed this year. Offensively, it was an injured primary back, and they wanted him to be the bell cow, and they didn't feel comfortable going to somebody else at 100% over him at 80 or 70 or whatever percentage he was. Defensively, not so much injuries, it was more not fitting the gaps, not being in the right places at the right time, maybe not taking the right routes to get where they should be going. Which one do you think, Daniel, is the bigger factor for 2025 to get ironed out?
Be sure to subscribe at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. It's free. It's the best place to catch all our episodes, and it's the best place for you to comment with your reactions.
I think for me, it's the defense, right? I think the offense is going to be fine because, and again, we'll get into some of this other stuff, but I think the running game will be fine because I think the offensive line is going to be vastly improved, right? 4 returning starters, senior guys, veterans, all that kind of stuff. Bill, I feel good about where the defense is because I love the defensive coordinator hire.
Yeah.
But was all that tackling and misfitting and all that stuff last year just on Wes Goodwin? I look, I think he was part of the equation that caused some of the problems, and hopefully Tom Allen can fix that. But the tackling was not good last year. And you want one example, go look at the game-winning touchdown by South Carolina. I mean, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right? So has all that been fixed in just one off season with one new coach? It's not like there was and I know there's other analysts and other moves there. Brent Bulwer's coaching linebackers. I get all that. But in the old days, that would have been one new hire that came in, right? And it's Tom Allen. All the other assistants remained the same. So is all of that just fixed? I don't know. Again, we won't know until they play LSU, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and we've got questions about where the new transfers fit and how they fit, all that kind of stuff. But all of it goes back to me is tackling, right? They didn't tackle well last year, and that starts up front, and that's got to get fixed if this defense is going to be anything close to what Clemson fans are used to.
Yeah, and I think my ray of hope there is thinking back to when Kevin Steele was first hired. And for all the problems that developed down the road, when they hired Kevin Steele, the tackling got fixed and it got fixed in a hurry and at all 3 levels of the defense. Like it was dramatically improved. So
Yeah.
I would think, we've seen the the little clips coming out from Clemson football, right? Of Tom Allen being very animated out there, being very in people's faces. And then in a way that's kind of coaching and I don't want to say positive, but it is a little positive-ish, right? We've seen videos of Chris Rumph like riding guys and making sure, hey, you got to get this right. And I've read the reports about, hey, go do it again. And, to the point where one freshman actually just like got in such a habit of that he had a good rep from one thing I read the other day and went ahead and went to run it again. And Rumph was like, "No, you're okay, you're okay."
Love it.
I
Yes.
think that was Tiger
Yeah.
Illustrated that had that. I hope that's right. They have so many insights. I'm never going to give them all away. They have so many insights like that though in their reporting. They do a fabulous job. Can they be that, or is it going to be more like when Garrett Riley was hired on the offense, and it took a year for that to really gain
Right.
traction? Like you make a great point. Like it might not be that instant impact, like it was very visible with the start of the Kevin Steele era. So, which was kind of short lived, but I think much like a Tommy Bowden, for all his problems, didn't really, he didn't get the credit that he got for bringing things from the Tommy West and Ken Hatfield eras up to where Dabo Sweeney could make a national championship contender out of this program. Kevin Steele also did lay some certain groundwork for Brent Venables to come in and do what he did, obviously at a much better and more complete level. And then that I think is what you have to look at running back. Like the whole group has to get better, has to get more complete. No coaching changes on the offensive side of the ball this year, so it's on CJ Spiller, it's on Garrett Riley, it's on Matt Luke in his second year to make sure that the momentum up front carries things. Garrett Riley has to balance that passing game and that running game and find the right niche. Riley, Spiller, and Dabo Sweeney have to find the right running back rotation because there wasn't enough of a rotation last year with Phil Maffa after he got hurt. The one game I got to go to last year, and it really changed the complexion of Clemson's season because I had a lot of belief in Phil Maffa and what he was going to be able to do as the workhorse running back. That just for whatever reason didn't turn to Jay Haynes, didn't turn to David Easy-Mummy, didn't turn to other guys, and late in the season had to bring in Adam Randall. I think there was enough reason for optimism. A, like you say, the offensive line can do a lot, but two, that whole running back by committee against Texas, like there were glimpses, and that was kind of with guys who were being pressed into service in short notice. So with a spring ball to get ready, with fall camp to get ready, I feel better about that than I do the defense. But it's still a problem. Like you've got to be able to open up enough of the backfield for the passing game to do its thing.
Well, I can't, Bill, and also go back to, I mentioned the South Carolina game, the Texas game, right? Clemson takes the lead early and can't stop anybody, right? The whole game. They finally get the game back to a one-score game, and boom, long touchdown run, right? So well, I mean, that stuff can't happen again this year. And then I also look at the schedule. I think the schedule is really tough. And, you just look at these tough teams on the schedule. LSU is supposed to be really good. We'll see what they are on the offensive line. They do have their quarterback back. I like their quarterback a lot. So we'll see. He's got some stuff to clean up. He's not perfect, but I do like Garrett Nussmeier a lot. Troy has had a pretty good team the last few years. Georgia Tech is going to be dangerous at Georgia Tech. Syracuse is good. Who knows what UNC will be with Bill Belichick? I mean, SMU just in the ACC championship game last year. Louisville beat Clemson last year, and it wasn't close. Right. So, and in South Carolina on the road. So I think the schedule is tougher this year too. And you mentioned rat poison. I know that's kind of the joke now. Everybody says that because Nick Saban said that a few years ago. But how ready are they to play? Right? Have they been listening to, hey, Clemson's a top 6 team in the coaches poll, and how many players were on the preseason ACC team from Clemson? I mean, it looked like it was the entire roster almost on that first team. So are guys listening to that? And it's fine for. I mean, it's the same as, and Dabo says this all the time. Good news or bad news on the outside, you can't listen to it. Yeah. So whether it's, hey, you stink, or whether you're great, what are guys focused on? How focused are they? And I say this all the time. that depends on the leadership. And you cannot have a good or even great college football team without good leadership during the off season that keeps everybody focused.
Right. And not just the coaching leadership, but the
No,
seniors and
right.
the upperclassmen and the guys
Absolutely.
who are being talked about as first round draft picks. Like they've got to lead by example. They've also
Yep.
got to be vocal. They got to support their coaches and have everybody on a consistent message. And we heard some of that during this offseason with the departure of Wes Goodwin, that maybe there were conflicting messages, conflicting ideas, and guys were having trouble getting on the same page on that defense. Well, that's how you end up with run gaps not being fit. That's how you end up with guys taking bad angles or being in the wrong place, or going solo and feeling like they can make the play, when it's not necessarily their part in the scheme to be that aggressive. So look, you and I aren't in the locker room. We're not privy to those kind of things, but I think a lot of what I saw on the field the last couple of seasons, last several seasons, really kind of told me, how bad do they want it? How focused are they?
Yep.
Maybe they did, believe a little bit about, well, I got to Clemson, and that means I'm good, and I'm going to go out here and I'm going to be great. And was the work there? Was the focus there? Like you say, like I don't want to say dedication. I think everybody's dedicated. I think everybody wants it, but I think sometimes there's a lack of understanding of exactly what it takes to get there. And Ben Bulware is a voice who will
Yeah.
resonate beyond his position group on that practice field and in that locker room, and make sure everybody knows that, hey, it wasn't just 2015, 2016 teams that he started for. It was all those guys that came before him, like he said, and I believe it was the celebratory parade and gathering afterward, that where he uh, mentioned name after name after name, guys who put
Yep.
in the work to elevate the program. And that's really what this team has to do. They have to re-elevate this program and get it back to where it was. And it's been much closer to that than I think a lot of people have been willing to give Clemson credit for. They're giving Clemson that credit this offseason. Can they make the most of what they have the ability to be is going to be a big question. And then I think you have to get into the aspect of, you know, finishing. Like Dabo Sweeney talked a lot last year about finish. That was supposedly his word and his theme. And they did not.
No, they didn't. I mean, look at the South Carolina game. I mean,
Mhm.
they should have won that game and they did not finish on either side of the ball. Look, I know we blame the offense or the defense for how that game turned out, but the offense, right? I mean, you're up and you keep three and out and three and out and short drive and punting and no rhythm whatsoever on the offense.
Right.
Your defense is going to give up points. You have to play complementary football, right? And I know that's cliche and coach speak and all that stuff, Bill, but things become cliche because they're true. And I may have said that in this series. I've probably said it at least 3 times in this series. When you might want to say that's a cliche, but it's true. You
Yeah.
can't three and out, three and out, and three and out, and three and out, and then expect your defense to keep going out there every single drive and stopping somebody. You've got to score some points. Then your defense has got to do the job. Again, that goes back to focus. That goes back to work. You said dedicated. Look, all these guys are dedicated, and
Right.
all these teams work hard. Uh, you know, I've seen it up close with my son Ben being at Clemson for 5 years and now at UNLV. Just how hard these athletes work, and the staff members and everybody around them. I knew it, but you see it in person, and you're like, whoa. Yeah. I mean, that's a long day for a young man to do all that practice work and then go to school too. But it's how. So it's not dedicated, but is it the right kind of dedication, right? When things go bad, and things are going to go bad, right? Couple three and outs in a row, or receivers slamming their helmets. Is the quarterback, hanging his head? Is the offense coordinator look confused? What's going on when things go bad? And that again, that goes back to leadership too.
Yeah. And when you talk about, like, you don't see a lot of that, the things you talked about,
Right,
right? Like
right.
these teams don't give up. Like they got down bad against Louisville. They kind of closed the gap late. Like they didn't give up and quit and just let it get even further out of hand. They narrowed that gap and made that game look a little closer than it really was. Say the same about Texas. Certainly the ending against South Carolina wasn't lack for trying, right? But
Right.
you've got to have that ability to take in the information that's being given to you, try something different. Don't keep trying the same thing over and over. And we'll see where that gets Clemson this year and what kind of lessons they've learned. I mean, the coaches know more, A, about what actually happened on the sideline in the locker room last year, and two, are more qualified to fix it than we are. But there's no doubt that that's been an issue. And then, one other thing, and I'll bring up that could be a big problem this year.
Connect with us on social media. That's at Clemson Kickoff. Whether you're on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, or Facebook, you'll find us there.
Is an area where they just had, to me, few to no answers last year, and that was safety. With R.J. Mickens and with Khalil Barnes, even with just that one spot, coverage became a problem at time for the Tigers in that secondary. And when you look at now, Mickens is gone, and what a rock he was last year, if you ask me. And Barnes had to get his feet under him. Didn't start the year well, so that for a while was two spots, and then it seemed like the scheme maybe changed a little bit. We saw Terrell and Hampton giving more cushion when they lined up because they're trying to prevent the home run ball maybe and things like that. You know, limit run after catch, allow the catch, but don't give up that huge, down the sideline, up the gut, up the middle of the field touchdown on a deep ball, or let a short ball become a deep ball. That's got to be fixed like out of the gate, because Garrett Nussmeier is a quarterback who can absolutely take care of exploiting those weaknesses right there in week one. So there's got to be a lot of work done there. They've got to find two guys to figure out coverage next to Khalil Barnes at safety. We talked in our series about Avion Terrell, Ashton Hampton are fabulous at corner. It's hard to find a better duo than that in the college game these days. Where else is that coverage going to come from? How else are they going to limit that? And obviously, they're hoping up front can narrow the amount of time that someone like Nussmeier has to work with. That doesn't mean you don't have to fix the problem.
No, but I do think it is connected, right? I do think, what was Brent Venables known for? Pressure, getting after the quarterback. How many times when Brent Venables was the coordinator did Clemson lead the country in sacks, right? And, there was that 4-year, 5-year stretch where Clemson led the country in sacks for the whole stretch, and it wasn't even close. And it's maybe even more than 4 or 5 years. So, that goes back to last year. There were issues getting pressure on the quarterback. Parker did his job, but where was the rest of the defensive line? Guys helped, but it's got to be more consistent. I do think having Peter Woods playing in position, I thought he was playing out of position last year. We understand why. You're trying to get your best 4 guys on the field. But I think having that starting group of Woods, Parker, Capehart, and then Helt, bringing in Will Helt, I think is going to be huge for this team. But there's not a lot of depth as far as experience depth. But that coverage on the back end and the pressure on the front end, all that stuff is connected, and that has to work. I mean, that has to be part of the equation. There has to be more pressure on the quarterback. There's got to be guys rushing in their lanes and not. You talk about this all the time. Guys rushing out of control and not in their lanes, and then give up. Lenore Sellers' long touchdown run because guys aren't in their lanes. The linebackers have to be more consistent, right? So, but again, does that all go back to just the coordinator change? We won't know until they play some games. Is, as you bring up safety, is that your biggest concern, is safety as far as a position, like position by position concern?
I think it is the biggest one. It has to be, right? Like, I saw enough out of the running backs and the O-line last year to say, you know what, they can be adequate. Like, they can be average or maybe a little above average. And there's, of course, a chance that they could turn out to be great. There, of course, is a chance that the safeties could turn out to be great. Kylan Griffin, Ricardo Jones, Ronan Hannafin, all three very athletic, very capable, but we just didn't see that consistency. We saw too many busts from Griffin and Jones last year. Hannafin's just moving over there. What's he really going to be? Can someone surprise us behind them? We haven't seen it, quite frankly. We've seen fewer flashes and glimpses out of those guys than I think we have out of running back. And I think those are the two positions that just don't have a clear-cut starting unit. And,
Hey, check out our website, clemsonkickoff.com. It's got kickoff times, it's got archives of episodes and blogs, some offers. It's a simple resource for you.
we'll use that to segue into another one that might not, and not that we're going to get into names or anything, but you talked last year about special teams just being such a problem for the Tigers, not the good kind of problem, the problem for Tigers opponents to handle, like the in-house problem of, oh my
Right.
gosh, what's going wrong? Because after you get past Nolan Hauser, who thank goodness emerged last year and
Yeah.
thrived,
Yeah.
I don't know what else is going on. So, and I'm even willing to say, hey, the special teams is not really a third of the game anymore. There's so much offense, there's so much pass rushing, and defense is trying to create turnovers and big plays. I do think it's minimized the impact of special teams to where it's not quite a third of the game. But I think you talk more about that need for special teams to be really strong and really sharp.
Well, there's a couple of things here. Thank God for Hooser, right? I mean, but Bill, how many kicks did they have blocked last year? I don't even want to add them all up, but I did go back and
Right.
watch some games last year, and they weren't getting blocked because of him, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you go back and watch the Florida State game. You go back and watch a couple of these games where kicks got blocked, and the protection got, there's at least two protection guys laying on their back.
What protection?
Right, right. So I'm not going to point out names because they might not even be in that spot this year.
Right.
Maybe they weren't supposed to be in that spot anyway.
Well,
But
a lot of people said Peter Woods was supposed to be over on that left side last year, but the injury pulled him off the field.
right, right.
Yeah.
So you can't have a protection guy laying on his back because you're not putting up any kind of a wall at all, and you're not slowing the guy down either. So you're opening just a wide open lane for a guy to block a kick. So that's got to get fixed. And then the punter situation has got to be straightened out. Look,
Right.
Aiden Swanson coming back. I thought this time last year he had announced he's coming back. I was like, hey, that's great. He was not as good last year.
No.
And there were a lot of 35-yard punts. And, you're giving, again, it's all connected, right? It's a 3 and out and then a short punt, and you put the defense in a bad spot. And you've got to be more consistent with the punts. I don't care if it's a 40-yard punt with no return.
Right.
All right. That's fine. That's fine. Hang it up there for 5 seconds and there be no return. I'm okay with it. There's not a lot of, I know people get caught up in the return game in football. There's not much return game in football anymore.
Right.
They've kind of legislated that out of the game, but you've got to be able to flip the field. You've got to play field position, right? To where you're not giving the other team the ball at their own 40 because of a 25-yard punt. That cannot happen. So
Yeah.
I think I do still think of special teams as a third of the game. Maybe not points wise, right? But it is a key part of keeping that momentum. And hey, if we're gonna have a 3 and out, well, I'm gonna Chris Gardocki it and give you a 50-yard punt, right? And then the defense runs back on the field with some juice because there's a long punt, and the team's got to go, the long distance, long field. So I think that's all got to get fixed for sure.
Backing away from special teams, I think there was a common theme along a lot of what we were talking about, and it's the thing that has everybody so high on Clemson is they just look and, oh, there's so many players back. They're going to be one of the best in the nation. Well, the assumption when people hang a lot on that fact is that, and I think we're down to about 5 minutes here, by the way, is that they're going to get better, right?
Right.
Like
right.
more guys are going to get better than don't. Most of the guys are going to improve on some level. And it doesn't mean that everybody suddenly jumps up and becomes a first round draft pick, out of thin air. But if everybody gets a little bit better and a little sharper at their job and a little, stronger, faster, whatever it might be, faster is a lot to ask, but sometimes with technique, you can be quicker at least.
Right.
Will that happen? Number one. And number two, the naysayers who are countering those people who are just talking about, oh, they got a lot of people back. Well, Clemson had some problems last year that cost them the Louisville game, that cost them the South Carolina game, that got them blown out in the second 30 minutes of the Georgia game. those things have to get fixed, and none of those are necessarily just incremental steps. Filling run gaps was absent all last year. It's got to happen this year. So can they do enough? Like, even if everybody is a better player overall, or most of those guys become a better player overall, is that enough to fix the weaknesses that were such Achilles heels for the Tigers last year?
Well, I think so because Bill, that's also focus,
Mhm.
right? Is how focused are you? How is it being drilled into you during practice every day, right? Or are you scared? And I don't mean scared in a bad way, but are you scared of that defensive coordinator that you might lose your job if you're not doing the job right? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, there was none of that last year. There were guys weren't being held accountable. Now maybe there was depth issues, so you hope some of that's fixed. I think some of it is guys in new positions too, or new roles. A Sammy Brown in a new role, right? A Wade Wood he's in a different role now. I mean, he's got to step up.
Yeah.
I think they're going to miss RJ Mickens more than we know.
I do
RJ
too.
Mickens is one of those guys where you don't know how much you're going to miss him until he's gone.
Yeah.
So I think you got to see the cornerbacks step up and lead. That's you mentioned earlier when I was talking about leadership. It has to be player leadership. That's the only way you can win at the highest level is player leadership. So go back to the Kelly Bryant when he left and Christian Wilkins grabbed Trevor Lawrence and led him as a player.
Yeah.
That could have been the coaches. That's fine. The coaches probably did it too, but it has to be player led if you're going to be a championship team.
There's a lot of quality people in this locker room, so it should be enough to outweigh anyone who might not be, and we'll find out. I mean, a lot of people are banking on that, and again, I like to be positive, but I also have to be well aware that what seems positive may not come to pass. So hopefully we've run through some of that. The reason I like to go through all that is that so I don't get like totally caught off guard, when
Right.
Clemson stubs their toe and loses to Louisville, a game that on paper they should not have lost, or blows up a rivalry game and loses one that they shouldn't. And I guess taking stock of all that is why we don't talk a lot about crazy Bill texts in
Crazy
game
Daniel.
conversations. Hey, yeah,
Yes.
ooh, I could have named this episode "Crazy Daniel's Worst Fears," but
People know if you know Daniel, you know Crazy Daniel. Believe me.
oh man, but I think we're on the same page with a lot of this, and hopefully that hasn't made for a boring episode. We are going to post this having finished the defensive rundowns position by position for the preseason 2025, as well as looking at the all-time greats at each position. And so now, after this one, we're going to run through the offensive position groups, best all-time and that 2025 preview. I hope everyone's enjoying that format, and can't wait to have you enjoy the next episode. We're glad you found us. Reign Supreme All Way Podcast, Season 4. And until that next episode, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.